I want you to listen up, America, to what she had to say. But I always figured that Epstein wasn't dead. Check this out.
At Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan and signed an updated version of his will. And he left $50 million to his lawyer, $25 million to his accountant, $10 million to the children of a Norwegian diplomat, and $10 million to Ghislaine Maxwell, and $50 million to Caribbean Islands, a Manhattan townhouse, a Paris apartment, a Palm Beach mansion, a New Mexico ranch, a 33-carat diamond ring, and 48 loose diamonds to his last girlfriend. And 2 days later, he was dead. And
Last will and testament.
Reyes and begged him not to do it. And Epstein told him not to worry. And the next day, Reyes was transferred out in a routine move. And the day after that, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead and alone. And then something interesting happened with the body. A jail supervisor told the FBI that staff took boxes and sheets and built what looked like a human body. And then they loaded it into a white van, one labeled as belonging to the medical examiner's office, and the media followed the van. But Epstein's actual body, that was loaded into a separate black vehicle, and it left, quote, unnoticed. And that's in the files. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's from an FBI interview memo dated August 16th, 2019, released by the United States Department of Justice on January 30th, 2026. And along with that, they also released over 3.5 million pages of documents related to Jeffrey Epstein, along with 180,000 images and 2,000 videos. And it is, by volume, one of the largest single document releases in American history. And I need you to understand something before we really get into this. This video is not about whether or not you believe in conspiracy theories, okay? This is not about speculation. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what I think happened. I'm going to just read what's in the files. I'm going to read quotes, okay? Directly from FBI interview memos, from emails between Epstein and some of the most powerful people on the planet, from a draft federal indictment that was written up, ready to go, and then just never filed. I'm going to show you what the United States government knew when they knew it, and what they chose to do about it, or what not to do about it, you know? And Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche went on CNN and said it out loud.
In July, the Department of Justice said that we had reviewed the files, the quote Epstein files, and there was nothing in there that allowed us to prosecute anybody. And that's what's important for the American people, and the victims want to be made whole. And so we want that. The Attorney General wants that more than anything. But it doesn't mean we can just create evidence, or that we can just kind of come up with a case that isn't there.
And then he said, essentially, we've shown our work. The whole world can look at it now and tell us if we got it wrong. So that's what we're going to do today. See what they got wrong. Because this shit is insane. They're just going to put a big trigger warning here. We're talking about a lot of very sensitive issues. So if you have any triggers to any of that or any sensitivity to that, please don't skip this video. But what we are talking about is extremely important because it is happening in our world, and I feel like we need to talk about it. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today have been glazed over, and I'm going to really get into them. So without further ado, let's get into this video. Talk about the names, and we're going to get to the names, okay? You need to understand what Jeffrey Epstein actually built. And if you want to get really in-depth with who he was and everything, you can go to my other videos about him, especially my first one. I'm not going to go into like who he is and how he was built and all that kind of stuff. We're going to kind of glaze over that and get right into all the new stuff. But there is a tendency to talk about this like it was a social scandal, like some rich creep knew some famous people and things just got out of hand, you know? And that framing lets everybody kind of off the hook. I think we're far past that now. But, you know, that's kind of how it's been talked about in the past. But this wasn't a social circle. This was an operation. It had infrastructure. It had employees. It had logistics. It had recruitment pipelines. And the United States government had the details in its hands for almost 20 years and did absolutely nothing about them. And buried in the 3.5 million pages is a 56-page draft federal indictment prepared by prosecutors in the Southern District of Florida sometime in the mid-2000s. 60 counts, not just against Epstein and 3 co-conspirators, described as personal assistants who were, quote, employed by Epstein. And their names are still redacted, even now in 2026. So 3.5 million pages released, and the government still won't tell you who these 3 people are. And the charges include trafficking of children, conspiracy, enticement of a minor, and traveling with intent to engage in illicit conduct. And all 4 defendants are described as having conspired to, and I'm reading this exactly as it's written, persuade, induce, and entice individuals who had not attained the age of 18 years to engage in prostitution, unquote. And 19 girls are named, all under Jane Doe pseudonyms, and some who were 14 years old. But here is how this all worked. The co-conspirators would call the girls and arrange travel to Epstein's Palm Beach estate. And Epstein would use them and pay them. And in at least one instance, a girl was also made to perform acts with one of the unnamed co-defendants for Epstein's benefit. And the girls were paid several $100s per visit, and then they were encouraged to recruit their friends. Bring another girl, get another payment, a pyramid scheme for abuse. So it was around $200 for a visit, $200 for a recruit, and when one girl hinted at telling someone, the indictment says Epstein told her that, quote, if she reported to anyone what had occurred, bad things could happen to her, unquote. She was 14 years old, and the indictment was never filed. And a blank space for a grand jury foreperson should have signed. Just disgusting. And why? Why? And there's also a separate prosecution memo addressed directly to then U.S. Attorney Alexander Acosta, and it recommended presenting a sealed indictment to a grand jury on May 15, 2007, and arresting Epstein shortly after. And the memo describes Epstein as, direct quote, an extremely high flight risk and, from information we have received, a continued danger to the community based upon his continued enticement of underage girls, unquote. So they weren't describing something that happened once. They were telling their boss, this man is still doing it right now. We need to arrest him. But instead, Acosta cut a deal. And Epstein pleaded guilty to a state charge, not a federal, of solicitation from someone under 18. So not trafficking, not rape, not conspiracy, soliciting prostitution, as if a 14-year-old girl was a willing participant in a business transaction. Are you even kidding me? So he got his 18 months, served 13, with work release, meaning he could leave jail during the day. And the Department of Justice later reviewed the deal and concluded Acosta had used their exact words, poor judgment, not professional misconduct, poor judgment. And Acosta went on to become Donald Trump's Secretary of Labor. Okay, we're connecting dots here. And he resigned in 2019 when all of this started coming back around. And inside the House among the FBI 302s is a 2007 interview with a household employee at the Palm Beach estate. And his name is redacted, but the agents wrote down everything. And his daily duties included fanning out $100 bills on a table next to Epstein's bed, placing a gun between the mattresses, cleaning up after what Epstein called massages, wiping down vibrators, throwing out tissues, laundering towels, and disposing of condoms. And he told agents that Epstein once had him buy flowers and deliver them to a student at Royal Palm Beach High School to commemorate her performance in a school play. And Epstein directed him to rent a car for the girl, described in FBI notes only as UF, an unidentified female, and he recalled another girl who looked very young. And when the FBI asked him point blank, do you believe some of the girls were under 18, the employee nodded. And the agent noted he was, quote, affirming that he believed some of the girls were under the age of 18, unquote. And the FBI also noted that Epstein enjoyed taking the girls out for ice cream at a local parlor. and that he let some of them even drive his cars. And the employees were even sent to take them shopping at local malls. So ice cream, car rides, shopping trips, cash on a nightstand, and a gun between the mattresses, and flowers delivered to a high school. Just textbook grooming, right? Just a predator operating in broad daylight with a full staff. And the FBI had this interview in 2007, okay? 18 years before these files were released. And the Palm Beach Police Department identified 27 girls and women between the ages of 14 and 23 who went to that house for massage services. And they were typically paid $200 per visit, and they were, quote, encouraged to find other girls to bring with them, also for pay. And Ghislaine Maxwell did a video on her as well, didn't just recruit, as we've talked about before. And according to the FBI's 302s, she ran the logistics of the entire operation. And she brought women in under the guise of professional massages or dance sessions, always the entry point. So you think you're getting a legitimate job. And then the massages become something else, as we know. And Maxwell and Epstein arranged domestic and international travel for the victims, and they provided logistical support for passports, and they used modeling agencies as fronts to recruit foreign nationals. And one FBI report describes Maxwell as, quote, dangerous figure who directed victims' clothing and social interactions to suit high-profile men. Can you imagine a woman looking at a child and dressing them up and presenting them to these predators? Like, what? I hate this woman so much. I hate this woman. I hate everybody involved in this, but I don't know. I'm going to get very mad through this whole video. I hope you know that. And the modeling agent, Jean-Luc Burnell, was identified in the FBI records as an intermedial who recruited young girls through modeling fronts. And Burnell was later arrested in France on charges of assault minors and trafficking minors for exploitation. And as we've said before, he was found dead in his French jail cell before trial, ruled a you-know-what, just like Epstein. Convenience. But the control didn't stop when the girls got out, because multiple survivors told the FBI that after leaving Epstein's orbit, they were contacted by people claiming to represent his interests, people who pressured them to cooperate with federal investigators. But before we get into who these girls were seeing or who they were forced to see, I want you to hear what this looked like for the girls inside this machine. And the first was a 2021 FBI interview. And a woman told the agent she met Epstein when she was around 14. And she confided in him that her childhood had been, her word, shitty. And she told him she had been molested as a child. And Epstein told her he was sorry about that. And then he started having her come to his house for massages. And she described them as uncomfortable, because both of them were undressed, and he touched her in ways she didn't want to be touched. And she tried to stop him. And the FBI notes say she, quote, felt degraded when she went to Epstein's home and felt taken advantage of. But she also said she felt happy because she had a bunch of money, unquote. She was 14, and she'd already been abused once. And she told a grown man about this abuse, and then he just took advantage of her vulnerability and then got paid. Like, what's a 14-year-old supposed to think? And the second was a woman who was approached outside of a New York dance studio at 17 years old, and she thought she was being offered dance-based fitness sessions for a wealthy client. And the sessions became massages, of course, and the massages became sexual encounters. And it just continued for years, and Epstein paid her, tried to control her career, and encouraged her to bring in her new friends. And both women described the same system, the same gradual escalation, the same isolation, the same financial control, the same machine. So that is, in all, what we have. Emails, FBI interviews, a draft indictment that was ready to go, and employee testimony about the gun and the cash and the vibrators and the ice cream and the flowers sent to the high school. Just a mechanized system of abuse with employees, logistics, and recruitment pipeline that treated teenage girls like a renewable resource. And zero new prosecutions. Sorry, quick pause. I look different right now. I'm recording this on a different day. I might look different in different parts of this video just because more information came up and I researched a little more and wanted to add it to the video. So if you see me in a different outfit, that's why. But let's get back into it. So then we have the diary. And among the files is a 32-page journal kept by one of Epstein's victims. And she was 16 or 17 years old, and her attorney submitted it to the Department of Justice as evidence. And every page is stamped confidential in attorney's eyes only. And the entries describe a girl living under total control. Everything in her life, where she lived, where she went to school, what she did, was dictated by Epstein. But what the diary documents goes beyond control, and it documents something much, much worse. Because according to the diary, Epstein fathered a child with this girl around 2002. And she gave birth to a baby girl, and the baby was taken from her. And she describes the birth.
Car accidents happen, and when they do, you need a strong legal team on your side. Hi, I'm Colin Jones, senior partner.
What's GovPlus? GovPlus is revolutionizing how you apply for any of these important documents. Apply in minutes with one secure
links and to push all the pain away. And she also writes, quote, I saw beautiful fingers, this tiny head and body in the doctor's hands. It reached its tiny arm and had a tiny foot. And then she was given 10 to 15 minutes to hold and feed her daughter before they took her. And she writes, quote, she is mine, I want her back, distraught. And a 20-week pregnancy scan is pasted into the diary. And next to it, she wrote, quote, she is gone and she won't be coming back, unquote. And in another entry, she writes about a second pregnancy, saying, quote, tomorrow is the halfway ultrasound for Jeffrey. This one stuck. After they took the first baby who survived and the early miscarriage, I think it was called, I no longer feel like a person, but a vessel, unquote. Like, this is, like, talk about Handmaid's Tale and the rich taking babies. Like, every conspiracy theory, the worst kinds we ever thought of, are real. Like, according to this diary anyway, allegedly, you know, but I'm just going to go ahead and choose to believe the victims, like I always have, but I hope you do too, because I just wouldn't put it past I just wouldn't put it past them to take kids and sell them. We'll get to some even worse stuff that they could be doing. It's sickening. And she goes on to say, quote, will they take this one too? Who has the first one? Where did Ghislaine go? She is never around. I am not old or mature enough, or even in a place to have a baby that I would be responsible for. Will I ever be free? And in a separate entry, she describes miscarriage, saying, quote, so it came out in the toilet and I didn't know what to do, so I just flushed the tiny little fetus. You have made me numb and I hate you for this. I hope I never see you again. I am not your personal incubator. Where is the baby and where is Ghislaine? And she also writes about why Epstein chose her specifically, saying, quote, why me? It makes no sense. Why my hair and eye color? She compares his obsession with creating what he called a superior gene pool to Nazi ideology, and she claims she wasn't the only one and that Epstein fathered children with several victims. And this tracks with earlier reporting, because in 2019, the New York Times revealed that Epstein had told scientists and associates about his ambition to seed the human race with his DNA by impregnating women at his vast New Mexico ranch.